Bernie Sanders is on the floor of the Senate again, outlining two very important things. One is that we spend way too much money on war, and two, we don't spend enough money on. Like, we spend so much money protecting Americans, but we don't spend any money taking care of Americans, I feel like is his point. And
protecting ideology, I don't think it's protecting money. It's like the police. They're protecting property or assets
so in
or
the middle of like a pandemic, like the worst pandemic in like 100 years, they're approving like $750 billion war spending packages. And Bernie Sanders has a problem with that.
We have a war right here against a virus called COVID-19.
Yeah.
And I've got the weapons to arm Americans.
Let's take a look.
Or Californians, at least.
Madam President, we are talking about a bill that will spend some $740 billion. That is more money in terms of military spending than the next 11 nations combined. Anybody have a problem with that? Well, some of us do.
Who are we going to fight against?
Let's debate it.
The next 12 nations, obviously.
A bill that will be spending more money on the Pentagon than we did during the height of the Cold War and the height of the wars in Vietnam and Korea.
Yeah, isn't that nuts? I mean, I think he says adjusted for inflation later on, but yeah, we're spending more money on war now than we ever have. I mean, minus the world wars, maybe.
It keeps growing and growing and growing.
But for what? Who are we fighting?
Because we're caught. Well, it's not only that; it's a lot of contracts. Like, I know people who are now getting paid on contracts that they won a couple years ago.
So it's just normalized that war spending is just for people to get paid now.
Well,
is that what people think war is?
War spending, but if it's military...
No, but that's what you said. I asked, who are we fighting? And you said, well, it's because there's military contracts. And it's like, oh, okay, so war is just for a way for us to dish out contracts. It's not about who we're fighting.
Yeah, it's like a fear-mongering type of thing. I think that's why people are like, yeah, but then on the ground, there is a lot of contracts.
So we're just spending money to give money to businesses in America. That's it.
If they can win those contracts.
Yeah, but it's not about the war. It's actually about giving money to people, like giving money to the military contracting industry, the military industrial contract. Yes. Like, it's not about the enemy. It's about giving them money. That's why we're spending this money is to give them the money. That's it.
They keep saying they need more because I say it's very similar to what we're seeing with our police departments.
But we're spending more money on war than we ever have. And we're not even fighting anyone.
But the military industrial complex services more than just outside wars. When people say our economy is like, that's why I won so many contracts through. But all of the things
I know, but
within the U.S.
This is for war spending, and it's like, why are we spending so much?
War spending is just military spending.
Still,
budget.
Yeah, for what? Anyway, let's keep going with this.
It's huge. It's huge.
Anyone have a problem with
their
that?
Budget?
Well, I do. Maybe some other people do. Maybe you don't. Tell me why you think we should be spending more money on the military today in terms of inflation than we did during the war in Vietnam. Let's debate it. We are talking about a bill that will provide 53% of the entire discretionary budget to the bloated and wasteful Pentagon at a time when the Defense Department cannot even pass an independent audit.
Oh, so like you said, I said, okay, you were like, let's build software and get these military contracts. That would come from this budget.
No, I get it, but he says they can't even pass an independent audit, so it's obviously fraudulent.
Yes, very.
Like, bloated. Like, it needs restructuring.
Definitely, it cannot. It wasn't built to move this much money or assets or commodities or do so much. But I don't know why we made it so. I don't know. I don't know why we created such a big
huge budget for the Pentagon. They cannot pass an independent audit. And the response of the Senate is, well, let's give them even more money. May make sense to some people, doesn't make sense to me.
Billions. How about send them accountants?
I mean, they all make money from
Don't
the
y'all have the
military.
IRS?
Yeah, but they have it like in writing that they don't have to be audited or something, like the Pentagon spending.
I know.
And so they're
military's written up a lot of
yeah, and so
stuff
why
that gets
is
away
it
with a lot of stuff?
they get away with 53% of our discretionary budget? And so why is Bernie Sanders the only one calling it out? Is it because
everybody makes money from the companies who have won contracts through these?
yeah, the military industrial complex. They bought all of the senators and congress people that they need to keep the wars going. So that's what's happening.
Or the economy going. They're gonna just sell it as the economy. That's why.
Still, we need to be in war to keep our economy going? That's messed up.
Pretty
My
much.
view, it would be rather disgraceful for us to leave town, recess the Senate for 2 weeks without getting a vote on a single amendment, and then come back in a couple of weeks to pass a $740 billion defense bill without any opportunity to amend that bill. Madam President,
So they're about to
Don't die on us,
recess.
Bernie.
They're about to recess. So they
This is like what
there's a
happened when COVID
700
started.
there's a $740 billion bill. They're about to recess, and when they come back, they have to pass it. And he's saying you guys are strategizing this so that we can't even add any amendments to the spending, so that it can just get passed for your buddies in the military-industrial complex. So that's what's going on. We can spend
They already have those contracts in place. They're just waiting for the money
We
to
can
drop.
spend $740 billion more on war, but everyone in the United States gets a $1,200 check for COVID-19.
Unless you have those contracts.
if the horrific pandemic that we are now experiencing, where tens and tens of thousands of people are coming down with the virus every single day,
I think we made it to
if the
50,000 a
pandemic
day.
has taught us anything,
Crazy.
it is that national security, the well-being of our people, protecting our people, is a lot more than just building bombs and missiles and jet fighters and tanks and submarines. Our people are in trouble today in an unprecedented way with the pandemic, with an economic meltdown in which tens of millions of people have lost their jobs over the last couple of months. And we have got to focus on how we protect those people. And it's not just spending money on planes and guns and bombs.
Yeah.
First Amendment would reduce the military budget by 10% and use that $740 billion in savings to invest in distressed communities in every state in this country that have been ravaged by extreme poverty, mass incarceration, deindustrialization, and decades of neglect. It is no secret.
Huh. It's like, would you rather spend money on planes and bombs or schools and
Against
communities?
theoretical. I mean,
And it's not even, you still get 90% of your budget for planes and bombs. It's not even like we're taking a huge portion of it.
he just wants it not to have the increase too.
Mm-hmm.
They're pushing for an increase every
To
time.
anybody that the American people are hurting, but all across this country, we have communities where unemployment today is 20, 25, 30%, where people are sleeping out on the streets, where schools are underfunded, where decent quality childcare is virtually not available, where air and water pollution are rampant.
Yeah, we all
And it is
forgot about
time
Flint.
that we stop turning our backs on those communities. So what we are doing right now is focusing attention on the fact that 40 million Americans are living in poverty. Half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. And maybe, just maybe, instead of investing more money in nuclear weapons and submarines, and God knows what else, maybe we want to invest in our own people. in jobs, in healthcare, in education, so that they can live their lives with dignity and security.
You know, about a year ago,
And that would help the economy long term way better.
I feel like when Bernie Sanders coined the term democratic socialism, a lot of even Democrats put like stank on it. They're like, socialism. But now it's like when you use the word socialism in this post COVID-19 world, I think a lot of people are like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Like,
It sounds like you're right. We're missing something.
yeah, it's like
Because
why do we spend more money than like the next 11 nations on war and still have like record-breaking poverty and like homelessness and like incarceration? It's like it's bananas how we've demonized socialism to the point.
that's from the very beginning. It was capitalism against communism.
Well, I think a lot more
understand
people
why.
are waking up to or becoming more educated on the differences between communism and socialism.
Rather
And it's
than
like we
just
still
accepting
have
the
private
rhetoric
ownership.
given to-
Yeah, in
Yeah.
America, it's not you're not infringing on any of the rights of the capitalism economy. In fact, you might even
Well,
be
I think
bolstering it
also
because now people have
socialism
more
was meant to,
resources
be a
to
merger.
participate in the
Yes.
capitalism economy.
And making sure that the bottom goes up as the whole thing, is like it's trying to make sound infrastructure, especially when you have such a huge population to start taking care of. And it's like they refuse to, you know what I mean? Like that rugged individualism kind of works when we were all in we have a lot of land and all our cities and they're so separate. Like, you know how the COVID rules can be statewide, different, whatever. But then once we're in such huge communities that we have big cities and whatever, like we have to realize that like how to sustain and grow those communities. And I don't think for some reason we learned that
Well, I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem like any of the senators are really interested. So
in teaching it.
no, and even implementing it, they're like, fuck
Because
that, more money
they're-
for bombs.
They're where they are without having disregarded all of that this whole time.
I know, and so we're still gonna spend more money on bombs. It looks like,
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
They're gonna pass it. Was
They're
this
gonna-
today? Oh,
He's only doing this so people can be more aware, but there's no chance he's gonna change any of the votes.
in the Senate.
I believe right now, in the midst of all of the crises that this country faces, the crisis of the pandemic, the crisis of the economic meltdown, the crisis of racial injustice, the crisis of 100 million people being uninsured or underinsured, the crisis of climate change, I think the American people want real transformation. They're tired of the status
They
quo.
need it.
They want a government which represents all of us, not the 1% and wealthy campaign contributors. And I do understand that the people behind this military budget who love it so much are the military-industrial complex and the defense contractors. They're doing phenomenally well. It's a great budget for them. Their CEOs make tens of millions of dollars a year. They make huge profits every single year. It's a good budget for them. But maybe we may want to get our priorities right and have a good budget for working families and low-income families in America, and that is what my amendment does. Instead of investing in weapons of destruction, instead of spending more money on the military than the next 11 nations combined, maybe we should invest in our people. And what this amendment would do is provide funding, again, for 1,000 distressed communities from Vermont to Oklahoma who would receive federal funding to hire more public school teachers, provide nutritious meals to children and parents,
Not
offer
separate
free
the family
tuition
and
at
put them
public
in
colleges, universities, or
Pennsylvania.
trade schools. Madam President, at this pivotal moment in American history, we have to make a fundamental decision. Do we want to continue spending billions on endless wars in the Middle East, on weapons of mass destruction of which we have more than enough, or do we provide decent jobs and education and health care for millions of people in our country?
It's like Our government would rather spend billions of dollars making other people's lives hell rather than improving the hell that they made here. It's like they made hell in two places. Good job. Hi everyone, hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more.
Happy 420 wherever you are. Bye.
And if you don't have buds, we're your buds.